You're watching Back in Time News. You're sitting with the Revolutionary War.
Oh, hello. Sydney Sky here reporting to you about the Revolutionary War. The war occurred on April 19, 1775, and it ended on September 3rd, 1783. In April 1975, the first shots rained out. At the Battle of Bunker Hill, colonial official William Prescott said, "Do not fight," so the troops did not do it. Congress chose George Washington as Commander-in-Chief of American Armed Forces. The Revolutionary War started because the British king treated the colonists unfairly. The colonists wanted to become their own country. When King George III refused to let them be thief on country, they started war. On April 1775, the first shots rained out. On September 3rd, 1783, the colonists signed the Treaty of Potsdam became the United States of America. The effects of the Revolutionary War were good and bad. The colonists here freed from Britain and started their own country. America had a mutual friendship with Britain, who would soon become their own greatest ally. George Washington was elected as commander of the army. He led them across the Delaware River on Christmas Eve and carried out a sneak attack on Russia, which was a major turning point in the war. After the war, George Washington became the first president of the United States of America. This is Cindy Sarah reporting from Back in Time News. Back to you, Carmen.
Now here's Ryan with the Indian Removal Act.
In 1830, during the presidency of Andrew Jackson, Congress passed the Indian Removal Act on May 28th. The law authorized the president to negotiate with Indian tribes for their land. Andrew Jackson, also the person of interest, supported the Revolutionary War and was captured at the age of 13. His captors mistreated him. When he was president, he vetoed the renewal of the Second Bank of America's charter in 1832. The cause of this event was the westward expansion. This was because they kept meeting Indians along the way, and it stopped them from expanding. The effect that was many Indians died of exposure, starvation, and disease during this long walk to the west of the Mississippi River. This event is also called the Trail of Tears.
Here's Tom with the Industrial Revolution.
Hi, my name is Thomas Clarniff, and I researched the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was a transition to new manufacturing processes in the period from about 1760 to sometime between 1820 and 1840. The Industrial Revolution began in Great Britain and spread to Western Europe and the United States within a few decades. The Industrial Revolution evolved to the Second Industrial Revolution in the years between 1840 and 1860, when technology and economic processes continue with the increasing adoption of steam transport. Some people have left farms to work in factories. Other immigrants or people who moved to one country from one country to another. The first industry was textiles or clothes making. New spinning machines and power looms enabled people to make cloth more quickly than they could by hand. A person from the U.S. who was involved was Samuel Slater. He built the first factory in America based on the textile manufacturing he brought from England. He built a cotton spinning mill in Puxatawk, Rhode Island, soon run by water power. Over the next decade, textiles was the dominant industrial in the country, with hundreds of companies created. Thank you for listening. Now back to you, Carmen.
Now here's Bento with the Civil War.
Thank you, Kaylee. The Civil War started in the year April 12th of 1861 through 1865 of May 26th. The Civil War lasted for 4 years. The cause of the Civil War was the uncompromising differences between the free states and the slave states over the power of the national government to prohibit slavery in the territories that had not become states yet. The Civil War started in Fort Sumter, which is located in Charleston, South Carolina. The war took place in many places, but it mostly took place in Virginia and Tennessee. At the end of the Civil War, the Union, which were the northern states, won, and the Confederacy, which were the southern states, lost. When the Civil War ended, it affected the United States as a whole. One thing that it affected was the population, because people were dying in the Civil War. It also affected the Southerns, which were the Confederacy side poorly. The reason why is because it freed slaves from removing a bulk of the Southern workforce. Polly Cushman played an important role for the Union Army. She was a spy for the Union. She was paid to toast Jefferson Davis, which was the president of the Confederacy side. She became a camp follower in Tennessee and Mississippi. She managed to figure out the Confederate Army's plans, but was caught. 3 days before her hanging, she escaped because of the Union attacked the camp. Back to you, Katie.
Here's Melissa with the Great Depression.
Hello, I'm Melissa Halva, and I'm going to tell you about the Great Depression. The Great Depression was an economic crisis of the 1930s. The Great Depression led President Franklin D. Roosevelt, known as FDR, to presidency in 1932. FDR was born on January 30th, 1882, in Hyde Park, New York. He died on April 12, 1945, in Georgia. He was elected president on March 4th, 1933 to April 12, 1945. He was the 32nd president of the United States. The cause of the Great Depression was because of the stock market crash of 1929. The Great Depression started soon after. The effects were people losing their homes, no more jobs, and people starving and losing all their money. The Great Depression happened all over the world. It happened in Australia, Canada, Chile, China, France, Germany, Great Britain, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Latin America, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Portugal, South Africa, Soviet Union, Spain, Sweden, Thailand, and finally the United States. The stock market crash happened on October 29, 1929, known as Black Tuesday. The Great Depression had a devastating effect on countries rich and poor. Thanks for listening. This has been Melissa Halva with the Great Depression.
Now here's Carmen with World War II.
Hello, my name is Carmen Mariachi, and I'm talking about World War II. World War II was a war fought from 1939 to 1945 in Europe. And during much of the 1930s and 40s, the war in Europe began in earnest on September 1st, 1939, with the invasion of Poland by Nazi Germany, and concluded on September 2nd, 1945, with the official surrender of the last Axis nation, Japan. This war was the most brutal war in history of the war. In this tragic war, over 50 million people died. Adolf Hitler had a huge part in this war. He led the Germany army. Thank you.
Thanks, Carmen. I'm here on the 25th anniversary of the end of the Cold War. The Cold War started before the end of World War II in 1945 and ended in 1990. This was a war without weapons, but with words and ideas. The Cold War was the longest war in U.S. history. It lasted 45 years. It was a mind game between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Cold War started because the USSR's fear of America's nuclear weapons. Also because the Americans feared of the spread of communism. Something that happened because of the Cold War was the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they built the Berlin Wall. The United States, Soviet Union, France, and Great Britain split Germany and the city of Berlin into 4 zones. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, was formed by the United States and many Western European countries to help the Europeans fight against the Soviet aggression. Someone that was very interesting during this time was our former president and commanding general of the Allied forces, Dwight D. Eisenhower. During his presidency, his focus helped keep the Cold War in check. This has been Kaylee Del Vecchio with the Cold War on Back in Time News. Back to you, Carmen.
Now here's Sydney with the civil rights movement.
Hello, this is Sydney Caballero reporting from Back in Time News. I'm doing a special report about the civil rights movement. In 1954, the government passed Jim Crow laws, which stated that blacks and whites must be separate but equal. These laws treated whites as a dominant race. Blacks and whites protested peacefully and violently. Some protests were the Selma Walk and the Boston bus boycott. Martin Luther King Jr. gave one of the most important speeches during this time period, the I Have a Dream speech. Anne Moody was a civil rights activist. Born on September 15, 1940, she was the oldest of 10 children. After receiving perfect grades in elementary school, she became a writer. Her most famous books were Coming of Age in Mississippi and Farewell Too Sweet. Finally, in 1968, the civil rights movement ended, although racism did not. Blacks got voting rights and began to feel worthy. Whites didn't get as much special treatment. Public buildings were now shared, and both races lost property, possessions, and family. But most importantly, the country was desegregated. Back to you, Kaylee and Carmen.
Hi, my name is Connor. I'll be telling you about 9/11. 9/11 happened September 11, 2001, and took 8 months to clean up. 4 planes got hijacked in 9/11. 2 planes hit the World Trade Center in New York City, and the 3rd plane hit the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And the last plane crashed in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Over 3,000 people were killed during 9/11. The 9/11 events were caused by haters of freedom and democracy. This caused airports to have metal detectors to see if people have guns. 9/11 also caused a war in Afghanistan and is still going on today. 9/11 was not the first terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. A bombing happened in February of 1993 and killed 6 people. Rick Riscola was a retired United States Army of British. Rick was born on May 27, 1939 and died on September 11, 2001. Rick grew up with his grandparents and his mother. Rick's mother was a housekeeper and companion to the elderly. Rick was a national sportsman, setting a world record in the spot put, and was a great boxer. Rick died in the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center. Thank you for listening.